Now is the time for change. Doing business in the 21st century is made possible with Ngongi, external and internal audit assurance providers. Log on to ngongi.com to find out more.
This week on Doing Business in the 21st Century, we're looking at some of the issues facing the non-executive directors of a company. An area of particular focus for non-execs is having to sign off on the internal controls of a company when they don't have a daily function at the company. Our expert guests on the panel today are Anton van Wyk, the Global Chairman of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and Faye Mukadam, a facilitator at the Institute of Directors. I'm Leigh Roberts, and with me is Mervyn King. Mervyn, what are the qualities of a good non-executive director?
Well, the first thing, he or she has to have courage, because he or she is putting his or her reputation and personal estate on the line. Secondly, they have to have independence of mind, and they have to apply that independence of mind to an issue and decide it in the best interest of the company, putting aside present needs and past experiences. This is an intellectual exercise. Then they have to have the ability to ask those intellectually naive questions, which the Americans call the dumb question, but actually ask questions to make management think. For example, at your first board meeting as a non-executive director, the non-executive director might say, "Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for my induction. I want to thank the Group Company Secretary. It was an excellent induction. I have read the annual report, which is made up mainly of the financials, and had great difficulty in understanding it because I'm not a chartered accountant, but I read it, and I didn't understand how the company actually made its money. So may I, through you, Mr. Chairman, ask the Chief Executive to explain to me, how did the company make the 149 million rand bottom line?" And you could just feel the atmosphere in the boardroom change. And then you actually sometimes get the chief executive spluttering away. But then you start, the non-executive director actually starts the other directors thinking, and particularly management. And certainly when I chaired a lot of companies, those directors asked what I call intellectually naive questions. One of the things I used to watch was the body language of management.
See, when they started fidgeting. Okay, there's so much in that, Mervyn. I'm going to drill down in one moment. But Faye, any other qualities that a good non-exec should have?
I think Mervyn touched on it when he said courage, because that's something that we are seeing an increasing need for in the boardroom today. The courage to ask what Mervyn calls intellectually naive questions, but more importantly, the courage to challenge whatever is either presented or the status quo, and to challenge until a reason is given, or at least there's some sense made to everything. The courage to stand up and be contrary when everyone is quite happy to go along with what either the CEO is presenting, or even the way that the chairman is conducting the meeting. And I think the courage to stand up and really be able to stop the process, to understand where it is that we're going, and certainly with all the new considerations that are facing independent non-executive directors at the moment, to challenge what has been done from a slightly different perspective nowadays, and those talk to considerations which I'm sure we'll discuss later, like sustainability considerations, integrated reporting, and the whole new IT space.
Yeah. Qualities of a good non-exec, Anton.
Well, Leigh, I think you've heard most of the individual attributes, I think, that make up a good non-exec director, and I also like to see these as collective. You know, what are the collective attributes of the board or the committees that help assist a director in making the right calls, asking the right questions? And I think a lot of that is around skill. You know, if you consider, for example, I think less than 1% of board directors globally were previous CIOs of a business. You know, what kind of skill do we have on the board that actually complements the requirement of that collective board? And I think those skills, sometimes when you unpack and the qualities and the attributes, you unpack that board of director and the individuals, you'll find potentially maybe internal audit skills lacking, there might be risk management skills lacking, might be IT skills lacking. So,
and that really is an important role of the chairman to make sure that his board, as Mervyn, you always say, has to have a kaleidoscope of skills.
Correct.
Want to drill down into courage, strength of character. Okay, so CAS Business School did analysis of the top 18 high-profile corporate failures in the past decade. One of their 6 reasons was the inability of non-execs to exercise control. So clearly they should be having character and strength of character, but it's not happening, Mervyn.
Well, just taking up on what Anton said, it is absolutely true that 90% of the board does not understand IT. And so you can have a presentation done by an expert saying you must spend another 100 million on IT. But it takes courage for a non-executive director to say, excuse me, I don't understand what you're talking about. Please explain it in clear and understandable language. Until the board and the chairman is to blame. If you have a situation where only 1% of the board is actually understanding an issue, then the chairman is not doing his job to make sure that collective mind is an informed collective mind. And it is absolutely disastrous. Now, there's a natural human inclination not to say, excuse me, but I don't understand this, could you explain it to me? Because you think Faye is going to think I'm stupid, you know, if I don't understand this. But that's what you have to do.
But the thing is that it's clearly not happening in the boardroom.
No.
That's not.
The question around controls and a non-executive directors is such a critical one, because with the control environment in an entity, it is up to the board members, as Anton said, as a team, and one assumes certain skills and experience mix contributing towards Mervyn's kaleidoscope on the board. The only way, though, that you can ensure that your lines of defense, starting off with management, are operating in the way that they are required to, is for the board as a whole to be engaging robustly. And, at the risk of now repeating ourselves, it's always going to come back to courage. So it's almost less about, the kind of technically proficient director you are, and more around the individual that you are, which talks to leadership considerations, values, integrity. And do you have the strength of character to put up your hand and say, as Mervyn has said, I simply don't understand, without any fear that you're going to be seen as not having read your board pack, or being stupid, or being an immature director.
But can you really expect, Anton, an average Joe to understand the complexities, deep complexities of financial derivatives or IT?
well, I think it is. It is unfair, I think, to expect the average Joe to get to that kind of level. But that average Joe does have the capacity to ask those naively
common
intelligent
sense questions.
And also has the capacity to maybe do a bit of research themselves. I mean, we know about that. I think also the average Joe should ask underlying questions and not worry about the highly technical aspect of what those issues might be. For example, have we assessed the fact potentially that our organisation might be open to breaches, targets, cyber attack targets, privacy breaches? Do we understand where all our assets are, the value of those assets, who protects those assets? So I think there's a lot of backup material that is available and the questions that should be asked. And I just wonder sometimes where we kind of look at cost rather than actually understanding the underlying issues. And I think linked to that as well is that where we are sloppy around first line of defence, where there are unintentional slip-ups, costly errors, how have we actually unpacked those to understand the legacy of those particular issues and how they're being addressed for us going forward? How well are we versed in market trends, things that have happened out there? The Target supermarket example in the US. I think if we're really looking at the cyber attack and privacy breaches,
this is the much loved Target.
Yeah. So, just to answer your question, I think it is unfair on the average Joe. But if you are in that position, I think you have the capacity.
The onus is on you.
Correct.
You have to do it no matter how you get there. What is the legal liability of a non-exec director in the case of these highly complicated and complex transactions?
Well, first of all, there's no such thing as the legal liability of a non-executive director. There are liabilities of a director.
Whether you're non-exec or exec.
In the business world, we have created the executive director, non-executive director, independent, non-executive, lead independent. But if you read the Companies Act, or the Corporations Act as they're called in other jurisdictions, every director has the same duties: good faith, care, skill and diligence. So it's only a question of fact whether a particular director had more knowledge than another one in making a decision which causes harm to the company. In the nature of things, the executive director, being at the coalface, usually has more knowledge, and therefore one reads, out of 7 directors, the 4 non-executives found were not liable and 3 were liable. So the average reader assumes that the executive director has got a more onerous duty to the company, but that's not the fact. But what is happening in several jurisdictions, directors have a duty to take a risk for reward. It's part of your duty of care to the company. That's why the trustees of your pension fund invest in the equities of companies, because they believe the return will be greater than leaving your money in the money market. But I'm afraid what is happening in several jurisdictions, directors and some directors in South Africa believe that the new Companies Act has created more onerous duties on them and greater liability. Now, legally it's not so, but let's leave that aside for a moment. That's a perception. And so we actually are in a situation where risk aversion is being driven by self-concern. Now, to be risk averse out of self-concern,
Personal self-concern.
personal self-concern, that's an improper purpose. And you're actually failing in your duty of care to the company, because no economy can afford for its directors to be risk averse.
It seems to me that there's huge risk in being a director. So what is the reward for being a director? What is average fee, Faye?
The average fee is a factor that has different contributing variables. So there are different industry considerations, there are different size of company considerations, and we were talking earlier about how long is a piece of string. So it's very difficult to peg down what is the average fee.
You get paid per board meeting. Is there any figure?
Well, no. Let me rather answer by saying that what are some of the criteria that's used to say that you could be paid either per hour, you could be paid in terms of an annual fee that is broken down or divided per meeting, and it could be anything from between 100,000 Rand to over R1 million for your annual fee. It depends on so many different factors, so it is difficult. There are many surveys out there giving some guidance, or rather insights into what those factors are that contribute towards pegging it down, but it's very difficult to just say this would be the average fee, the median fee.
But one hopes certainly that reward is greater than the risk.
Well, I think, Leigh, that certainly the reward for non-executive directors in terms of the liability is out of kilter. It's not commensurate. And Mervyn's right in saying that the divisions or the differentiators between categories of directors is something we've introduced. It's not a legal reality. And the non-execs having, taking a step back and not being involved in the day-to-day affairs of the company still have to ask all those questions and have to engage, again, robustly with all the risk factors to understand the running of the company. And I don't know any non-executive director that's adequately and appropriately paid.
And we're going to touch on that after the break. We're going to break now, but do stay with us as there's plenty more interesting stuff for non-exec directors when we come back.
Ngonki has the professional capacity to deliver on your external and internal audit assurance requirements. Visit ngonki.com